Welcome to the first episode of the podcast. We don't exactly have a name right now, but we will do soon. Brought to you by Central Labs, the best health supplement company in Ireland that provides you with stress complex and the alpha complex, which I use on a daily basis to help me, and budget appliances, the most affordable appliances in Belfast. We're here with Rory Doyle, good friend of mine.
Happy to be here.
So, Rory, how did we meet?
Oof. In the beautiful city of Rotherham, mate.
Oh, what a city.
6 years ago, is it? Just before COVID, or 5 years ago?
2022, wasn't it?
2022?
Yeah.
It's only 3 years ago.
Think it was.
So it was just after COVID, wasn't
Just
it?
after COVID, because I came back from Australia when COVID was done.
All right, so I thought it was just before. No, we were both. Me and you have always been pursuing further education and a part of our coaching and always trying to educate ourselves. And that's actually how we met. So we were both doing a pre-script seminar. I can't remember. It was hypertrophy optimization, it was called.
Yeah, it was a workshop seminar,
It
2
was,
days.
it was a workshop over a weekend from the guys. And it wasn't just pre-script. It was also Luke Miller from No Switch Fitness as well. And Cuba was there. So they're very, and that was back when the pre-script team was bigger. So we were at that seminar, and there was a couple of guys, but you were one of the first guys I got introduced to. You were always quite friendly, and did we train? Did we get a wee session that weekend?
I tell you what happened.
Or a couple of sets or something?
I booked an extra day not by accident. I done it on purpose because I knew that the boys were going to be there, like the Muscle Doc, Jordan Shallows, and I'd always followed them.
You trained with young Simba and stuff as well, didn't you, in Manchester? Yeah.
I trained with Oscar. So I stayed for an extra day because I knew everyone would go home and it would just be me, and I would be able to worm my way in and network and that. Well, it was just networking, and I ended up training with Jordan Shallow and training with Oscar, and Cuba was there as well, and AJ Morris. Got to meet all them boys, and I'll be completely honest, the only one I knew before I went there was Jordan Shallows, the muscle doc. I didn't know who Cuba was. I didn't know about Ultraflex, but what a way to get introduced to it. It was unbelievable. And the education and the networking I done there is still, to this day, one of the best I've ever had.
Yeah, there was a couple of other guys I met there that I still actually chat to this day, but that was probably the best seminar I've been to. I took a lot away from it. And one of the things I took away from is how much of a shithole Rotherham is too. And I'm never going back. Even if they have another seminar, I'm not going back.
It's a Dave. It is a Dave. I thought Trimbrick was bad, West Belfast, but
it's
Rotherham tops it.
Yeah, it's like a third world country in Rotherham. So
it is. Nice people, but nice people. If you're from Rotherham,
nice people, just
good people, but
just the city's not the most aesthetically
no.
pleasing. But you were sort of you were going from a more powerlifting background, weren't you? You like whenever you went to the seminar, whereas I was a bit more bodybuilding-esque. I was going for more Luke Miller. He no switch. He's a very, very tuned in bodybuilding coach.
Yeah, I wouldn't say. Well, powerlifting, yeah, I was in the strength side of things more, but more out of laziness, if I'm being honest. I just like lifting heavy,
And not,
but I was
not
like,
macros.
I was like, I just want to eat what I want and fucking lift heavy.
Typical powerlifter, bro.
I was like, yeah, powerlifter, thanks, yeah. I was powerlifter. I was just an out of shape bodybuilder.
Yeah, just a bodybuilder doesn't track his macros.
But yeah, no, see, to be honest, you probably got that impression because it was showing off, because they were all there. So I remember I stacked the deadlift plate. I stacked the deadlift platform like five plates.
I know you did, yeah. And you did a few reps. Yeah.
And I said to Jordan Shell, I was like,
what's my
you
form?
Record this for me, will it?
Yeah,
I was like, fucking pull it off the floor.
This is an 80% Jordan, so I'm just warming up.
And he was like, that was good, and fist pumped me, and I was like, the inner child in me was like, brilliant, unreal, that's me, but it was good, it was very good. And then we went, the next day, he invited me to meet him in Manchester.
That's gold.
So I know it was unbelievable, mate. Yeah. And we went up, and I just picked his brain for most of the day. To be honest, most of the day we just had a bit of crack. We had a laugh. Like, he's a very down to earth guy, and all the guys there were all very like down to earth boys. Like, I think they're just like they are just like us, but they were traveling halfway across the world to educate people, which is a big thing for them. Yeah. But we trained in Frontline Fitness. That gym is unbelievable.
I've trained in there too. It's very good.
£20 a day pass, some spot.
Yeah, it's a good gym, but I think the atmosphere is probably the best thing about those gyms. Rotherham too, it's a great gym, but the guys who train there and the intensity and that they train at, and just to be around those people is probably one of the best things.
Yeah.
It's like going there, you're just surrounded by people who are trying to improve themselves, and whether they're competing or whether they're just training for health, everyone's in good shape. Everyone's trying to get better, so it's a good environment to be in.
Good culture. I think that's what Belfast is missing. I think a lot of the North is missing.
Deprived.
Depraved. It's depraved of culture. Like the gym culture here can be quite toxic, I find, compared to England. Even though it can be still toxic, it's. I find here it's more competitive rather than
lifting each other up.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd say that. I don't think I'd say that. But what I would say is I feel like we're 5 or 10 years behind everywhere else. Probably 20 years behind America, 10 years behind England in terms of gym culture. Like now in the last 5-6 years, you see a lot more women into the gym, which is great. And in better shape. Whereas 10 years ago, women were only on treadmills. You know, they weren't lifting weights. And now sometimes I go in and more than half the people in there are women. And to be honest, most of my women clients are probably on average more on point than most of the men.
Yeah.
They train pretty damn hard. They follow their stuff. They stick to their plans. And I think the women are showing a lot of guys up these days. And so I feel like we're a little bit behind the gym culture. So it's fitness is lagging behind maybe England and America, but we're getting there.
Do you think it's the standard?
Yeah, the standard's lower, as it always is here versus England and America. But I feel like we're getting there.
Yeah. There's two things on that. I think it's a very subjective question too. It depends what gym it is, of course. Some gyms are welcoming, some gyms aren't.
Yeah.
Some gyms have a bit of a culture, some gyms don't.
Yeah.
But it's collectively speaking, you're right. I think we're developing, but
I find that probably the gyms people find most intimidating, I think you'll find the nicest people. Like, so my gym, the Gym Newry, right? People think it's full of big scary meatheads like me, shouting and screaming in the corner and intimidating everyone. But I think those gyms you'd be surprised that they're often the most welcoming and have the best atmosphere, and it's like even CrossFit gyms where there's classes and a team effort. Those gyms are quite welcoming. I think in fitness in general, at least I've never come across any gym that is discouraging. I feel like anyone who's in there, whether you're a bodybuilder and they're a marathon runner, I feel like you should be encouraging anyway.
Yeah.
All kind of aspects of fitness.
Yeah, well, we're going to go into a few questions, but before we do, I actually want to touch on that. So I find that is actually pretty much the same in terms of like sports. So, for example, when I was growing up, I used to think like fighting gyms, like Fight Academy, like MMA, boxing gyms, like even like local boxing gyms, I thought they were so intimidating from the outside looking in. And football teams, Gaelic teams, etc., were more welcoming. But when you actually go in, it's the opposite.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, yeah.
It is completely the opposite.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Like, I've never felt more at home in a fighting gym or a combat gym than I have in any football or Gaelic team. And this isn't the diss football or Gaelic teams. No, I'm sure there's some great ones out there, but collectively speaking from my experience, I felt far more welcomed in combat gyms, like MMA gyms, than I have in sport, like team sports,
I agree. And I actually think part of the reason why is because no matter who you are, if you're the toughest fighter in that gym or you're the biggest bodybuilder or whatever, you get humbled. Even the best fighter in the best MMA gym is going to get humbled and going to lose sometimes. So the egos aren't as big. Whereas if you're in like a football team, like the captain or the player, he thinks he's the man, the baller. Sometimes the egos and people don't want to let you in their circle. Whereas I think in the fight gyms or bodybuilding gyms, the egos aren't as big, I don't think, anyway.
Yeah. I do agree with you, but I find there's another reason for that. Another reason for that is because there's a different culture around it. So when it comes to MMA and it comes to boxing, there's a lot more discipline and a lot more teaching of mindset. So for example, like when I went to a football team, you were just told to play, and if you were bad, you were kind of pushed out gently. or forcefully. They're like, "You're shite, get out." But and then in the boxing gym, a guy pulled. I remember him. He's a coach, old coach, passed away now. Like, but he pulled me to the side and he was like, "Son, I want you to do me a favor." I was fuck kid. He was like, "Stop eating sweets." I was like, "What?" And he was like,
Calorie
just
deficit.
stop eating sweets, more or less getting a calorie deficit. You know, you're fat. And I was like, right, okay. And he was like, "Stop eating sweets, fizzy drinks. Want you to drink more water." He actually took time to say that to me.
Yeah.
Instead of making me feel like I wasn't good enough to be there, he took the time to say, "Right, we're going to get you to a point where you can spar, where you can do this and that." And to be honest, like, it really helped. I stuck by me. I still remember it to this day. Like, that was the first time I've ever been told you need to change.
He encouraged you instead of pushing you out and making you feel like you're not good enough. He encouraged you and give you those kind words.
Positive encouragement, constructive criticism to a degree. And it was good because it's always stood by me, and it actually stands by me in terms of my coaching, because what he taught me then was there's a way to say things. You know, like when a client isn't up to scratch, there's a way to approach it. You know, and I find a lot of coaches can go down the wrong way of shaming them.
Yeah.
And when you shame someone, all you're doing is forcing them to behave more reactively. Mm-hmm. And when you actually take time to give constructive criticism, maybe start with a bit of, you know, listen, you're doing really well on this side. I'm really proud of you for doing this. But this needs to be brought up to scratch because you're not on track with your calories. You're not on track with your, you know, your sleep time. You're not checking in on time, you know, and you bring that in gently. Whereas I find a lot of people just go straight in, put up a status being like, "Oh, my clients aren't checking in, they're all dickheads." And you're like, you know.
No, mate, I couldn't agree more with what you're saying. You hit the nail on the head. Now, there is a time when most of the time you want to say things in a way that the client is going to take positively, but there's a time and a place when you have to put your foot down when someone isn't listening. So I think each client has a little bit of a different psychology. So some people want you to be a little bit harder on them, but I think it's very important how you approach issues with clients. Like if someone's not following things, maybe there's something deeper, maybe there's something going on in their personal life, their family might be sick, something they lost their job. So you have to be very careful how you approach issues. Mm-hmm. And there's always a kinder, gentler way to do it. But if someone's consistently off track 4 or 5 weeks and you know they've no excuse and they're just slacking, sometimes a bit of tough love is what someone needs. Yeah. And something that taught me the most about this as well is there's a book, Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People, and he's talking over the exact things you're talking about, is like how to approach situations and both of the people come away feeling better. You know, if someone's not checking in, you could just outright slate them and tell them they're not good enough, they just don't want it bad enough, or you can approach it in a more gentle, kinder way, and maybe see if there's underlying issues or whatever. So there's definitely a better way to approach client issues. So I think you're correct with that.
I find that I developed that attitude more from growing up, from experience. So when I was growing up, there was a lot of death in our community, and there was, you know, my first ever coaching client, he killed himself. He committed suicide. And he was a friend of mine.
Your first ever client?
First ever client. He was a friend of mine too. But when he done that, you know, and I was at the wake and at the funeral, like, the boys that were there, like, I knew them all. You know, everyone kind of knows each other about the estate. And I had a lot of empathy for them.
Of course.
In the way I spoke to them. I was a coach at the time. Of course, I've been a coach since I was like 16. So I was coaching at the time. So it sort of shifted the way I coach, because it made me realize you don't know what people are going through. So one wrong comment could literally change everything, could be detrimental. For example, someone who's on the edge, you know, if you shame them and say you're not good enough, they already feel like they're a burden. You're just making that worse. So you do have to tread very carefully on how you speak to people. And I learned that through lived experience rather than I've obviously read books about it, mindset books and how to coach, etc. But I find a lot of the coaching skills that you acquire are through experience, and that's a lot of coaches are afraid to do that now. They're afraid. They're afraid to fail. They're afraid to fuck something up and fix it because they want a straight answer. They want to shortcut the success, if that makes sense, or the perfect coach. They want to be the perfect coach from straight out the hatch. Newly qualified, already the best coach in the city. Like, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, mate. And I think empathy is a very good quality to have when you're a coach. And I think you're a very empathetic person. I just want to touch on, see the way you said you don't know what someone's going through, and one bad comment that can be what sends them over the edge. In the same light, one good comment can be the positive encouragement that someone needs. Take, for example, your boxing coach telling you to stop eating sweets. That one comment, that was enough he showed you that he cared and that he wanted you to be there, and he also gave you a little bit of help. So that encouragement, that's maybe why you've stuck with boxing to this day. Whereas if he had took it the other way and slated you and said, "You be fuck, get out of here."
Well, I didn't really stick to it. Like,
you still boxing, you still train boxing to this day. You still hit the pads. You know what I mean? So that positive encouragement that day, like that can be what you'd be amazed how little positive encouragement young men get these days. And sometimes that one little nice comment can really make someone. Can really change their day, their week, their month, and get them on a better path, a positive spiral.
It is true. There is such a lack of encouragement now for young men, especially young men. I don't really know about young women. Like, I can't speak for young women. I don't know. I'm not in that circle. But in terms of young men, like, so much lack of encouragement. That's why I've been speaking a lot at the Fight Academy. A few boys up there, and like, high performance gym, like a lot of gyms that I trained at, etc., who are predominantly more combat based. When I speak to them, like, they have such a tight knit community. A lot of people call that cliquey, but it's not. They don't have cliques within it. They're all encouraged to, like, support each other, share each other's stuff. To train with each other. Like, the high up athletes are training with beginners. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, ones that are fighting in PFL, UFC, are training with boys who have literally just started a year ago. And, like, it's nice to see that. And I don't think you see enough of that. I think that's something that young men miss.
Yeah.
Something that I think that young men are lacking these days, and by quite a lot, is role models. I don't think there's very many good role models. And then the thing is, if you want to get into politics or whatever, there's the side on the left, they hate certain role models, and then the right says certain role models are bad. So there's so much confusion these days as to who actually is a good role model. Because 50% of the population will tell you, no, this person's a misogynist, and the other person will tell you, no, this person's a fascist. We don't like him. He's bad. He did this, and so there's a lot of confusion as to who to look up to and who even is a good male role model these days. And I think if young men don't have an ideal of what to look up to or who to be like, I feel like they feel quite lost.
Yeah,
I know I did for a while anyway, with without having a clear role model to look up to. So
yeah, well, that's prevalent as well in the research I've been doing recently on, like, fatherless homes.
Yeah.
Marriage breakdowns, etc. I've been doing a lot of research on that because I've got the Men's Mental Health Conference coming up in June. So I'm running the first male mental health conference of its kind in Belfast ever, to be honest. And when I announced that, there was, like, mixed feedback on it, but that's a whole nother conversation. But there was a lot of mixed it was a lot of mixed feedback on it. But yeah, it was very prevalent. I was doing a bit of research for some statistics, and I seen, like, the amount of fatherless homes, the amount of marriage breakdowns, from the 80s, 90s compared to now, and it's like a dramatic increase, and that you can't not admit that has some effect on young men, and that's why, and it's obvious to see that because they're listening to the likes of Chris Williamson, Jordan Peterson. There's a reason why they're listening to them boys, because they're looking for a father figure to look up to, but they could get that from the likes of, I find, like, combat gyms, because when I was growing up, even in that boxing club, like I would have looked at some of them. Like I had a great family growing up. My dad. I really look up to my dad, but I also looked up to them.
Yeah.
From an outside perspective, but young men don't really have enough of that now. You're right.
Yeah.
Right. But we'll dive into a few questions.
Let's get stuck in.
Right.
Make them juicy. Plenty of controversy. We need a couple of viral clips here. Let's get as controversial as we can.
Let's go.
Hit me with them.
Right.
We need to cause uproar.
Oh, jeez, don't.
Get cancelled.
I'll start. This is recording, so don't. Right. First question. What's one training mistake you made early on that others could learn from?
The biggest training mistake, if I was to sort of encompass it in one thing, it's not tracking enough. So at the start of my gym, I was training for fun. And I was making progress. I was doing well, but it wasn't until I started tracking macros, tracking my logbook and my training, tracking my body weight, taking check-in photos, tracking my lift progress, and then setting targets. It wasn't until I started tracking those variables that I really started to notice progress, because what gets measured gets improved. So if you're just going to the gym winging it, yeah, you might grow, you might get stronger, but you're not getting as much out of it. You know what I mean? If you're trying to save for a house, you're going to track your spending. If you're trying to, save for a car or whatever, you track these things. Any goal you're working towards, you set little milestones along the way. And so it wasn't until I started treating my training like that. You know what I mean? Okay, I'm tracking my body weight's up 0.5 kilo this week. Okay, I should be a little bit stronger. Or I'm in a fat loss phase, I'm down 1 kilo this week, and then that encourages me. I'm feeling good. So I think tracking variables was the single biggest difference that it kind of led me on a positive spiral, and so it wasn't until I did that I really noticed more progress.
I totally agree. Even now, sometimes I have to catch myself on when I'm not tracking things,
because it's an easy habit to fall into. Because it's a lot of times it's little small details, and can be bothered tracking that. They'll just let that slip, and sometimes those small little 1% that catch up. And
it's like the funny saying that some coaches have, like, who've been training for a long time. They're like, I don't need to track, I sort of know what I'm eating. And you're like, oh God. And I've been guilty of that a lot. And when you actually do track what you're eating, when you're in that headspace, you realize, fuck, I'm actually eating quite a bit here. And
it depends what your goal is. Like if you're working towards a photo shoot, or you're really trying to get stronger, if you have a serious goal, I don't think you can afford to just wing it. But if you're not training for an event and you don't really care too much about how you look, you can probably maintain and wing it, no problem. But the higher level you set your goals, the higher level it demands of yourself. So
100% agree. It does depend on what your goal is.
Yeah.
In terms of a training mistake that I made, I've been thinking about this one, and when I started training, you're like, I was like 14, 15, you know what I mean? I didn't have the money for a coach, right? But if I did have the money, I would have got a coach, but I didn't. So
I would have spent mine on drink.
Mate, I remember I was 15, mate, and I joined the gym and I lied about my age, right? Told him I was 16, I wasn't. Ended up getting a job a year later on the desk. So I remember I was skint. Like, my mum and dad wouldn't give me any money. I kept asking them for money. And it was 20 quid for a membership for a month. And I had an Xbox 360.
Right.
And I was like, the only way for me to get money for this gym membership is to sell that Xbox.
Sold the Xbox for the
Mate, I went to sell my Xbox, and the gym owner found out, and he texted me.
Right.
And he was like, mate, what'd you do that for? And I was like, I needed a paid membership. I was 16, and he was like, I was 15 at the time. He says, mate, listen, don't worry about that. I'll give you a job, and that'll cover your membership, and you'll get like 30 quid a week or something. That was big money. And I was like, I'll do me.
Did you get to keep the Xbox, or was it sold?
It was already away, for fuck's sake. But it was one less distraction for me.
Yeah.
Because at that time I was very locked in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it was the start of my journey, and but that's a whole nother conversation. But in terms of training mistake, like, I used to watch a lot of free content. So I would have watched like YouTube. Like, do you remember Six Pack Shortcuts?
Yeah, he was one of the first guys I watched them
my
all the time,
God.
bro. All
He
the
was
time.
full of shit. Full of shit.
Mike Chang.
Mike Chang,
Mike
full
Chang.
of fucking shit. I don't. But you're naive at that time. You don't know.
Don't have a clue.
You know, he's telling me
bro.
to do. He's telling me to do 200 crunches, and I'll wake up with a six pack,
Bro,
and
he
I'm
has
like,
a towel workout. You can search
Aye,
it up.
I done it.
And he has 20-inch arms. And
know.
he has a workout how to grow your biceps with a towel, or how to train your back with a towel.
I know. Well, as you can see, I did it. So shout out to Mike Chang.
Haven't been doing my towel workouts lately.
Aye.
So
But yeah, I watched a lot of free content, like Athling Nax.
yes, he's still going as
yeah.
well. He's one of the OGs that are still going to this day.
Brilliant. Christian Guzman, who actually replied to me about a month ago, and I had a fanboy moment.
Invited you to Alpha Land today.
Oh, aye. But I used to watch all them boys, and I used to sort of take their word for gospel. Mm-hmm. What I would advise anyone who's starting out training, to not make this mistake. Be careful who you listen to, and be careful who you take for gospel in terms of what they say. Take everything with a pinch of salt to a degree, and question things. You know, I don't think there's enough questioning that. Well, maybe there is, but from what I've seen, people don't really question things enough. You know, like when people give out advice for young people, young men starting out, there's not a lot of questioning. They just sort of take their word for gospel. But yeah, that's one piece of advice I would say is be careful who you listen to, do your research.
What I would just add to the end of that there, what you're saying is when someone gives you advice, right, and you're saying, you know, think about it or whatever, what I would say is apply it and see if it works.
Yeah.
And then you know. So it's like if I tell you a lat pull down is the best movement for your quads, go and try it and see how your quads grow. You know,
Yeah.
and they're not gonna. But so whenever someone gives you advice or whatever, apply it. Apply it to your training, apply it to your life. If it yields results, then it probably works. If it doesn't, it's probably bullshit.
Yeah.
So apply it. And that's because don't just take someone's word for it. You know what I mean? Because a lot of people are trying to sell you things and they sex things up and make them, more dramatic or, try and lie about things or whatever. So try whatever advice someone gives you in the fitness industry in life, apply it to your own life. If it yields results, it's probably good advice. If it doesn't, then scrap it.
Yeah, totally agree. Well, the next one. So let's see. For young men who want to be successful, what is the first step they should take, and what should they ask themselves to set themselves up for success?
So I think the lowest hanging fruit is fitness. So I think the easiest thing to do is get yourself in shape, because that's the lowest rung on the ladder. I feel like once you get yourself in shape, that builds a little bit of confidence. Okay, so whether you've lost the 10 pounds, whether you've gained a little bit of muscle, you've added the 10 kilos to your bench press, that gives you can walk around with your chest out a little prouder. You feel a little bit better about yourself, and that builds momentum to, you know what, I'm going to go ask that girl to be my girlfriend. I'm going to ask her out on a date. I'm going to apply for that job. I'm going to join this fight gym and make some new friends. I'm going to, try and, learn this instrument. That I feel like fitness is the gateway drug to improving your life. So
Yeah.
get some fitness in your life.
Get fit.
Yeah.
I would agree. I think getting in shape and actually looking after yourself is definitely a big part of it, because you are the foundation of everything else. Like, if you get in shape and you're fit, everything else is kind of like a downhill stream. It's easier, a bit easier. It doesn't mean it's easy, but it's easier. But in terms of young men, the first step they would take, definitely get in shape. But what I would say to a young man who wants to be successful is be aware that as you get older, your definition of success will change.
Yeah.
And you have to be willing to accept that. Because for you, when you're young and you're naive, success is probably you've got 30 girls texting you at the same time. And you have a six pack, and you're the most popular kid about. Everyone wants to be you, and you're the dog's balls, and that's your definition of success. But that will definitely change over time. Simple things.
It's going to change the 50 girls texting
Oh,
No, fitness is the gateway drug, and a good body, being in shape, is the ultimate status symbol.
it can't be bought, faked, or cheated. When you're in great shape, people see it as soon as you walk in a room. You know,
100%.
you stand different, you have a presence. Women treat you different, your family treats you different.
Yeah.
People in public treat you different.
Yeah.
Being in shape is the ultimate status symbol, and it will do more for your life, I think, than anything else.
I agree with what you just said there, but a lot of people will take that as like an attack. But I just want to let people know,
You mean fat, out of shape people are going to take that as
like
an
a
attack?
body shaming. But I just want to let people know this, like, we are not body shaming anyone. We are simply encouraging. Don't eat sweets.
I'm body shaming.
You're
No,
body
I'm not,
shaming,
I'm
but
not.
it's like it's like the comment, "Don't eat sweets." You know, like he said to me, like
Yeah.
you know, we're encouraging you to do better. We're not trying to shame you. We're trying to encourage you to do better. And I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that being in shape and you know looking good and looking like you look after yourself is a status symbol. It definitely is. And anyone who
of course it is.
disagrees maybe carries a bit of resentment for that.
No, they're just fucking stupid.
Aye.
That's just the fact. Because it is. And you're just denying reality.
Yeah.
There's too much. In these days, people are too soft, in my opinion. It's like what you're talking about there is just because I said getting in shape will help you.
Yeah.
People, overweight people that'll cry and say
They
I'm
do.
shaming them, but I'm not. Just because I say apples are my favorite fruit doesn't mean I hate oranges.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? In this day and age, just because you say something like, you know what I mean? Just because we're talking about men and it's the alpha male, you're in the name of your coaching and the alpha male podcast or whatever. Oh, you hate women? It's like, no, you never said that at all.
Yep.
You can support one group without, you know, demonizing another. Just because we say get in shape doesn't mean we hate fat people or we're telling you if you're fat, you're not a good person or anything like that whatsoever. We're just giving you advice that will help better your life, you know? So whenever we say that, it's not to put anyone else down. It's to help lift you up and give you the keys to success.
Yeah. I got a lot of abuse for calling my coaching service the alpha male coaching.
Yeah, and that's to the point I'm talking about. Is because
exactly,
you said that it's like,
100%.
oh, you hate women, but you didn't. There's nothing. Women are not mentioned in that at all. And can you not? There's enough women support groups these days, and men are suffering big time these days in America. Two women graduate for every one man. I think pretty soon that's going to go to 4.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You were talking about single parent households hurts men. Single parent households actually hurts men a lot more than it hurts women. Because when women grow up in a single parent household, they still have a mum.
Yep.
And they still have that motherly figure. When men grow up in a single parent household, more often than not, their dad's not there, and men are far more likely to get into drugs, into crime, you know, end up in prison, be jobless, hang around with the wrong people when they don't have a father figure at the house. So, I think.
Yeah. I'm not going to be completely accurate with this because I can't remember the exact statistic, but I was doing my research and the NHS actually released a figure where only out of all the people that went for psychological help to their GP or to A&E, only 32% of them were men, right? But as a collective, right, so men and women, out of all those numbers that went for help, only 26% that got referred for psychological help were men. Because the system is more set up towards women's health problems. Now, this isn't me saying that women are a problem. It's the system itself is designed, you know, more biased towards helping, you know, women and children first, in my opinion. Now, I could be wrong. I'm not saying I'm completely right, but that statistic is a statistic. You can't argue with it. So then the question is, why do men not get that help? And one of the conclusions that I sort of came to was it actually said in it, it's harder to refer men for psychological help because it's not internal health problems, it's external. So, for example, a man lashing out and hitting a wall, that's an external problem. Whereas a woman, like menopause or period or, you know, pregnancy, postnatal, that's an internal problem. So they can refer that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So external problems are more secondary, as in they're pushed to the back of the list. So men are usually external problems because they don't go through menopause, they don't go through postnatal. Even though they do have postnatal depression, that's true because of the change in their life. But there's less referrals for men than there is for women because they see they see external signs, external factors as less than internal.
Yeah, well, I'd like to add two things to that. So you're talking about generally less men being referred to like therapy and seeking help and stuff. And the two kind of points I have on that is, well, number one, I think that men don't deal with problems the same way women do. Women like to talk about their emotions and talk about their problems, and they really like to discuss things through, right? Whereas men, I think, help solve things better through action. So I think some of the best groups and best therapy sessions for men is when they're doing something together. Like men evolve to hunt and walk side by side. So I think you'll find the best maybe conversations and chats you've had with some of your friends, you're sitting side by side and you're doing something. So I think there's some research to back this up, that a better therapy for men is to like do something, be part of a club and actually do an activity and chat through your problems while you're doing something, fix a lawnmower with your friend, go for a walk with your friend, hike with your friend. I think that's much more effective than sitting down crying over a box of chocolates or whatever with your friend. And then also, I think men are less likely to admit they have a problem too. I think men have more of a I don't have any issues, type mentality, like, oh, I can fix it myself, or I don't need to talk. They have kind of a where they hold things in and they don't like to ask for help. A lot of them are too proud and don't like to admit that something's bothering them or that they have a problem. So I think those two things.
Yeah, before I go on to the next question, there's two other things I want to mention there. Like, I actually heard about that sort of research that men do talk more when they're actually doing something, and I think that's because it's a manly feature. I wouldn't say masculine, because masculine is the makeup of a man, but it's a manly feature to want to be useful. Yeah. So actually doing something 100%. Makes you feel useful, so then you're more likely to open up.
Yeah.
And then the second thing as well is, I think a lot of in terms of the referrals, I would love to know how many of the referrals actually showed up, because I know that I seek psychological help before when I was at a low point, and when it came to it, I had my sort of outburst, I had my breakdown, and the girl who was helping me at the time, she said to me, we're going to refer you to counselling. And I said, no, don't. They're like, why? And I said, because I don't want to take that away from somebody. I'm all right.
The stigma associated with it, yeah.
It's the women and children first kind of thing. So I was kind of like, no, listen, somebody else needs that. I don't want to take it. And still to this day, I would be like that to a degree.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's a bad thing, but it is and it isn't. You should have some sort of, care and empathy for others, and, you shouldn't always put yourself first, but there's times where you do need to put yourself first.
Without a doubt, mate. If you're not putting yourself first, if you're not your healthiest, your fittest, your smartest, your best version, how on earth are you going to look after your team of 40, 50, 60 clients?
True.
If you're operating on 50%, you're, number one, you're doing yourself a disservice, and now you've just done every client you have a disservice because you're not functioning at your 100%. So you have to put yourself first in certain cases, like I said, because you have to show up your best for your clients, for yourself. And if you don't, well, you're letting them down.
Yeah, it took me a long time to realise that. Yeah. But it's so true. And I speak to a lot of clients, a lot of people who want to come on board now, and most of them are fathers, and I'm not a dad myself, but
not that I
know of, but it's hard to speak on that because you haven't got that experience. But when I talk to them, they're like, oh, I've got the chair, I've got this, I've got that, and I'm like, mate, just please take a couple of hours a week to prioritise yourself.
Yeah.
And I was a befriender, a voluntary befriender for a lot of people in the community, so young men, even older than me as well. It's like a midway between counselling. So befriending is basically where you go for a coffee with someone, you go for a walk, rather than going counselling. And most people that go for befriending are male, which is another statistic, because they want to be doing something, like you said. When we were chatting, it was always, I have to do this for her, I have to do this for the kid, I have to do this. And I'm like, mate, what about you?
Yeah.
And they're like, but this is what I do. This is for me. 1 hour a week.
Yeah, but if they're not doing that whether it's the gym workouts, whether it's they love to go fishing, whatever it is they love to do, if they're not doing that self-care thing for themselves, then they're just not showing up their best. They're not the best dad they could be. They're not
Exactly.
the best husband they could be. They're not the best friend they could be, and they might think that they're doing their job as a father because they're always showing up for everyone else first, but they're showing up at 50%.
Yeah.
Whereas if they actually took the time put themselves first for that hour or two a week, they would show up much happier, much better, and everyone else would appreciate them much more too. So
Last thing before the next question, another thing that they actually end up doing most of the time, from my experience, is going to drugs and drink because they can't cope. It's their only escape. So actually taking time out to go and train, to go and socialise a bit, doesn't mean you have to go out drinking.
yeah,
The problem is usually men associate socialising with drinking and getting on it.
I don't know if I'd say that that's men. I think that's more just a Northern Irish culture thing. It is like, it's and well, we can get into drinking and stuff, but I just feel like there's endless excuses. It depends who you're hanging around
Yeah.
with. There's some people if it's a good day, we'll just go get on the pints. Oh, I've had a tough day at work, I deserve a drink.
Yeah.
So it's,
I used to think it was a Northern Irish thing, but I was in Australia and it was the same.
no, yeah, but half the people in Australia are from here.
That's true. Like, there you go. But Aussies are wild for the drink. They're wild for it.
I know.
So
I know.
it is a bit of a. It's a bit of a man thing, I suppose. Like, I suppose it's just the culture you're brought up in. It depends, I suppose.
It's who you hang around with mostly.
your environment.
Your environment's like, because I certainly don't go drinking every weekend. Do you?
No,
And I'm a man. Last time I checked.
yeah, I know, but that's because we stepped outside.
Because we curate our environment.
Yeah, we
'cause
curated our own environment. We stepped outside of the norm, and I think if you're not put in that position to do that, you end up falling victim to the norm. You become cultured to what you're surrounded by, and that's it.
stuck in the mud, man. And it can be hard to get out too, especially if you think that those people are your only friends and they're always going out drinking. It can be very hard to get out of that and get some new people.
Yeah,
Especially if you already feel like you've got no willpower.
makes me very grateful too that it did. Now, don't get me wrong, I've went out drinking plenty of times over the last couple of years, but by no means do I have a problem in terms of going out every weekend or anything like that. But what's made me very grateful that I got into training and I got into that sort of mindset is that growing up, the amount of guys that I grew up with and that I know, and even friends who died from overdoses, who have been sent to rehab, and I'm like looking at them like, fuck, how did this happen? You know what I mean? But for me, like, it's a bit of gratitude, but also a little bit of survivor's guilt kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I do get that.
100%.
And I'm like, fuck, I don't like. I feel bad, but then, it's a tough one for me to talk about, but it's very hard to see, especially when it's close to home. But that's why I would advise men, definitely, that just fucking look after yourself. Like, that's all we're asking is for you to go and train, lift a bit of weights, sweat a bit.
An hour a day to look after yourself is, and then the other 23 hours of the day you can put other people first. But if you're not doing those things to keep your mind right, your body right, you're just not showing up to life prepared.
Yeah,
you're fighting an uphill battle.
Exactly. We'll go on to the next question. So, have you ever had to reinvent your mindset to overcome a plateau?
Do you want to take this one first, or?
Yeah. I would say, in terms of mindset, when you hit a plateau, so a plateau is basically where you stick, you're not making any more progress. Mm-hmm. I would say you have to be more vulnerable. So what I mean by that is you have to accept that you don't fucking know it all. Yeah. Because I know that when I got to a certain stage of my training, I was in shape. I was, doing well, I had confidence. I was pretty high. But I did hit a wall in terms of my progress. But to me, my ego wouldn't let me accept help from other people because I thought I was the dog's balls. I was like, who the fuck's he to tell me what to do? But you do have to be a bit vulnerable and just accept that you don't know it all,
Yeah, I think that's probably, I probably align with that pretty close. Whenever I had to change my mindset the most is Probably when I was younger, and like I said, I thought I knew it all. I'm like 18, 19, 20, making decent progress, doing all right, and you find it hard to take advice sometimes, or reach out for a mentor, especially when you are maybe feeling confident and doing okay. You feel like you already know it all, so I feel like my biggest mindset shift was being able to go from someone who thought they knew it all to going back to being a student. And sometimes it feels like you're falling down the mountain. So when I hired my first coach, but I already had like 12, 15 personal training clients, and I felt like I was doing good. So when I had to shift my mindset and go back to, oh no, I'm actually a student now, and I started to learn a lot more about training properly, doing courses, the course that we were at in Rotherham, like that was when I was going to that, I was a student, and I went there as certainly didn't think I was the smartest person there. So my biggest mindset shift is just being more open to learning and knowing that like yourself, I certainly don't know it all, and I feel like the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. Aristotle or whoever famous Greek,
Aristotle,
Aristotle, whatever famous Greek philosopher said. But I feel like the smarter you are, and the more you learn about something, the more you realize there's a lot more to learn than you originally once thought.
There is, you're right.
The moment you think you know everything is the moment you don't know anything at all.
Yeah. One quick point just before we go on to the next question is that I think what can affect your ability to do that as well is maybe a bad experience. So say, for example, someone who maybe had a coach, when they have a bad experience with a coach, they've automatically went into that, they're not open to learning because they think the coaches don't have a clue because they've had a bad experience.
Yeah.
So, there is that side of it. So what I would say to somebody in that position is, have a chat with them and just suss them out, but go into it with an open mind and try to not paint everyone with the same brush.
Message me and I'll sort you out.
I guess a message.
Coaching experience.
I only
the link in my bio.
I only train men, but so be texting me if you're a woman.
No, I'll take everyone. So
anything goes with you.
Yeah, anything goes, mate.
So, next question: how do you train mental resilience outside of the gym?
Okay, so this is a good one. I like this one. So I can't remember the exact, don't quote me on it, but it's from a Huberman podcast. There's a part of your brain, I believe it's the neuroplasticity complex or something. Basically, there's a part of your brain, think of it as the muscle that gets trained when you do hard shit that you don't want to do. So now the caveat is, just because you do hard shit, it doesn't train this. So if I like to work out, I like to even do tough cardio sessions. Just because I do that, it's not training this part of your brain. It only gets trained. So this muscle, think of it as, like I said, the muscle to do hard shit that you don't want to do. It only gets trained when you actually do something you don't enjoy doing. So if I don't want to study for the next hour, I really don't, and I go and do it, that's built up a little bit more mental resilience in that area. If I, don't want to, if this, I don't want to go meet this person, I don't want to do this, learn and do this course. I don't want to do this podcast with Tiarnan or whatever,
Oh, you do?
If there's things you don't want to do and you do them daily, whether waking up early, I don't want to wake up at 5 a.m. You wake up at 5 a.m. I don't want to, have all my work done by 8 o'clock, and you have it all done. When you do those things that you don't want to do, that make you a little bit uncomfortable, that builds resilience, and it also builds belief in yourself too.
Yeah.
So that's
what's the saying? Eat the frog or lick the frog or something.
Well, yeah, eat the frog or whatever it is.
Something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Anyway,
Aye.
There's loads of sayings.
Do the hard shit. That's why at the start of the day you try to get the hard shit done first, because it sort of sets you up, doesn't it? To be more productive throughout the day. So you're right. It does create a bit of mental resilience.
Yeah, you bleed in training, so you don't hurt as much in war, man. You gotta make your you gotta whether it's life or whatever, it's gonna be a challenge regardless what you do. So you may as well.
Yeah.
I would rather have the challenges I put on myself be tougher than what life or other circumstances are going to put on me. So
choose your hard.
Yeah, choose your hard. Because you're going to suffer regardless. So I would rather put myself through a brutally tough workout and then go learn or get up early and do these hard things. So then when I do have a shit day, you know, or something goes wrong, or 5 clients drop off in 2 days, or I'm stressing, or whatever it is, or a family member's sick, or there is a lot of stress, you know, I'm kind of prepared. I'm resilient. I've gone through hard stuff, so I feel like you know, suffering is going to happen whether it's involuntary or voluntary. So make your voluntary suffering harder than the involuntary suffering, and then life's an easy mode.
100% agree. I've always said this: you're going to suffer no matter what, so you may as well suffer for something good or for something that you want.
Life is suffering.
Life
is that Gandhi?
suffering.
Is it? Or
It's
was that me?
Marcus Aurelius,
Did I just come up with that?
I don't know. I heard it. I think I've recently been big into Stoicism the last couple of years.
Meditations.
Yeah, I try not to put too much out there, but it's still I'm doing the daily Stoic in the minute. But I love the idea of the decision making behind Stoicism. I think a lot of people get it wrong. A lot of people think Stoicism is not feeling anything. It's not that. It's choosing how to feel rather than not feeling. So, for example, say you insult me, I choose how I take that, you know? So it's choosing how to feel. And I think mental resilience...
Is it choosing how to feel, or is it choosing how to act? Because I call you right? And so what do? Do you say something? Yeah, that's going to hurt your feelings regardless, but then do you say something back nasty, or do you just let it roll off your back? So it's, I think it's choosing how to act and not necessarily, because Stoicism is still feeling, but then it's up to you how you proceed forward and how you act.
Yeah, you're right. I stand corrected. Right. I stand corrected. It's choosing how to act, not feel. So you will feel a certain way, but it's how you respond to it, how you react. Yeah, so it's good. I think in terms of mental resilience is work on how you react to things and sort of be a bit more present and be a bit more, you know, cautious of how you speak and how you, you know, treat people. But yeah, in terms of doing hard stuff and, you know, doing things that you don't necessarily want to do, there's no better way to build mental resilience than that. Yeah. And it's hard. Of course, it's hard to do that, and a lot of people don't want to do that, so they'll look for it in easier things, and that's why drink, drugs, and all the rest of it, porn even, is like more of an easy, quick fix for them. You know, it's a quick dopamine hit. Yeah. So mental resilience, definitely do the hard shit.
Yeah, do the stuff you don't want to do, whether it's getting up early, doing that cardio session, starting that, you know, that Instagram page, doing that post, talking on camera, you know, when you don't want to and you're nervous, doing a podcast for the first time, you know, what are people going to think? Doing all that stuff that makes you feel uncomfortable, that builds belief in yourself that you are the person that you think you are. So do hard shit daily. Yeah.
So I'm going to finish off with about 2 questions. So
near the end already?
We'll go about 2 or 3 questions. So was there a more specific moment when you realised the training was more than just physical for you?
So there wasn't a single eureka moment, as they say, a single defining moment. But I think when I really started to realise how important training was to me was when I had my first injury. So I once injured my forearm and bicep, and I couldn't train upper body for months at a time. And it was only when that was taken away that I was like, oh shit, I really like this gym thing. And not only like because of how I look, but how it made me feel mentally. And it was just one of those things daily, like my routine that made me feel good mentally. So it was only when that was taken away, they say you don't really appreciate something until it's taken away. So when I was injured and couldn't train regularly or as intense as I usually do, that's when I really realized that, you know, I kind of need this, because I certainly wasn't as happy when I couldn't train properly. My mental health wasn't as good. My physical health obviously wasn't as good. So yeah, when it was taken away, it made me realize when I'm back and when I'm fully healthy again, I'm gonna hit this hard.
You were almost grieving the loss of training.
Having withdrawal symptoms. Yeah, so, I mean, it's
because I know it happens to a lot of footballers and boxers and all, and know when they retire.
Absence makes the heart grow fonder.
Oh, aye. And like I trained a lot of boys who were coming away from football and coming away from fighting, and you know, when they come to me, they're in like almost like a grieving process. You know, they're like, mate, I don't know what to do with myself.
Like that's their identity before I'm a boxer, I'm a footballer, you know.
Exactly, it becomes part of your identity. It becomes part of you, and it's maybe I'm wrong, but I'm not likely to be wrong on this one. So, strength training should always be part of your routine because it's the only thing that you can do for a very long time. Like, you know, I remember I met a boy in Australia. He was like 80 odds, mate, like nearly 90, and he was still in the gym lifting weights.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what other sport or other, you know, obviously, you know, there's like bowls and all that, but like, you know, who wants to do bowls? But
Who wants to do bowls? Who even wants to watch bowls?
Or cricket or something, you know what I mean? Like, but it's like, you know, that was his thing, and he could keep that going. It's great to get into sport, you know, combat sport. I would be very highly, you know, promotive of, you know, I would, you know, I love it. And team sport, definitely another great thing. But there's a sell-by date on it.
Nobody's going to be playing GA at 80, man, and nobody's going to be getting in the octagon at 80 either.
No,
I think strength training.
Unless you're Mike Tyson.
Yeah, well, he's not quite 80, but
Well, he's
you know, when he's fixing fights. If I was 80 and able to fix fights too, I'd probably jump in for $1 million or whatever. But
Now we're getting controversial.
I think if you just want to be a healthy, you know, resilient human being, I think strength training is a non-negotiable. It increases your bone density, your muscle mass. As you get older, there's like a lot of people get sarcopenia where they start to lose muscle mass and stuff, and you know, a lot of old people, you know, they get skinny, they get frail. So strength training, I just feel like is a non-negotiable if you just want to be a healthy, you know, organism and be fit and strong. And then also, like, do you want to be able to lift your grandkids up, or, you know, even your kids up if you're 30, 40, and when you're 60, 70, do you want to be able to lift your grandkids up in the air and put them on your shoulders and walk around and still be able to go about your daily life?
Yeah.
You know, my dad's 65 and he pretty much had a six-pack up until 5 or 6 years ago, so he's still in good shape, and he hack squats over 100 kilos every single week, trains like an animal. And you know, some people look at that and they think, oh, you know, that's so lucky him or whatever. But he's 65 and still doing these things because he's been doing them for the last 30 years. That's allowed his body to stay in that shape. He didn't just wake up last week and start going to the gym. So because he subjects himself, you know, to suffering in the gym week in, week out, looking after his body, strength training, his body's now serving him. He's the fittest 65-year-old and strongest 65-year-old I know. Certainly in my gym, there's no one around his age who's, and plus he looks 20 years younger than what he is. So
It must be a good influence on you as well.
yeah, it's part of the reason why I got into training and seeing him. But if you for longevity, for bone density, for whenever you take your top off in front of your partner, do you want them to look at you and think, fuck yeah, I can't wait to shag him or her?
Oh.
Well, then the strength train. Do you know what I mean? Do you want to be attractive when you're older or not? You know, do you want to look good with your top off? Do you want to be a fit, strong, useful human being?
100%. Like, strength training is going to stand by you in everything you do. Yeah. No matter what sport you do, no matter what job you have, anything, strength training is the daddy. Like, there is no... It is non-negotiable. It should be in your routine.
Strength is never a weakness, and weakness is never a strength. So if you're...
Marcus Aurelius said that today.
No, Mark Bell actually said that as a powerlifter. But yeah, it's like, to be strong is, like I said, it's a status symbol. When you walk in a room, people treat you different. You're healthier. Why wouldn't you do it?
Exactly.
Do you want to be a second, like, sort of class citizen, or you know, you only get one body, so are you going to look after it, or are you going to let it fall to pieces?
You know, every young man wants to be the boy. Like, I was thinking about this the other day. It's just touch on this before going to the next question. So I done 160 RDLs the other day, but I was like shattered. Like, it was that 160 RDLs to me wasn't even really a big thing, you know, in my head. It was actually pretty, not crap, but off from what I would usually do. And I think I got like 9 reps or something. But I watched the video back and I seen a boy who's actually strong. Like, he's strong, like, and he's in good shape in the background. Watching me. Myron from the background. Yeah. And then all the boys, like, you know, watching, and boys were playing and saying, like, you're bullying on. It does boost the ego, obviously, but like in a healthy way for me now, rather than when it used to. It used to make you feel like the dog's balls, but now it makes you feel more, you know, like a healthy ego boost. You know, it's like, it reminds me why I do it too.
Yeah, people are watching, they're taking notes.
Yeah, and it's also a thing I want to show young men, like, who are in the gym and maybe don't feel like they're up to scratch or they're not strong. That can be you. You know, I'm no different than you. I just stuck at it for longer, and I was willing to learn. So yeah, no, it's definitely something I've been thinking about since that. You know, your reasons for why you train change as you get older and as you get more experienced, and as you progress more. Because, as I said at the start, your definition of success changes over time. So does your definition of progress. You know, it does change. You know, your definition of, you know, why you train, or sorry, the meaning of why you train.
Of course,
It changes over time.
when you're first getting in, you're just trying to get the girls or whatever.
Oh,
aren't you? You're trying to get a few BBMs or Snapchats or whatever it is. Whenever you're getting into training, you know, that's all it is. You're trying to get a bit of attention, admiration, and then you know, 2-3 years later, you're putting on thongs and putting on fake tan and jumping on stage, and then all your mates are telling you how great your chest looks. You know, so
Or how big your man is.
you know, so yeah, but that's because your goals and stuff are always changing. So the reasons why you train and stuff are changing too. So yeah,
Yeah, definitely. I think for me, when it became, when I realized that training was more than just physical for me, it was when I started training, it was to fit in with my friends who were all sporty. I wasn't like bullied or anything. I wasn't unpopular. I had friends, you know. So I'm not going to come out with a sob story and be like, "Oh, I was bullied and I had to change my life."
you were crying before this podcast about it. No.
I know, but I was getting bullied last year. I wasn't when I was a kid. I was getting bullied last year. But I started training, started running, started tracking my food, developed a bit of an eating disorder, but that's different sort of conversation. But when I overcame that and I ended up in a relationship, and I had a girl, the reason why I was training was to fit in with my friends and to get girls. I'm just being transparent. That's the truth. And when I got it, it was like, I don't really care anymore. I just want to keep training. I love training now. It was on to the next thing. So, yeah, in terms of when do you realize it's more than physical? When you get what you'd done it for in the original. So when you actually achieve what you originally started training for, and you realize it's not enough, you want to keep training. I think that's when you'll realize that it's more than just a physical thing. Yeah.
So when I think about probably the reason why I got into training too, it's just more sort of feel good about myself. Because whenever I first started training, I was a skinny, you know, just bang average, probably not even average, you know, teenager. I didn't really have anything going for me. So I just wanted to feel good about myself for like the first time. You know, I didn't have any female attention. I wasn't the smartest. I certainly wasn't the most popular. I was just, you know, just bang average, probably below average, nothing out of the ordinary at all. So I just wanted to have something to be proud of. So I just figured, you know, if I, you know, going to this gym, getting a sweat on, getting my pump on makes me feel good. And then weeks, months, years later followed, and you know, you started to get hooked on it when I seen the progress and how good it made me feel about myself. And then it gave me, you know, it gave me something to feel good about, and then it just built more and more momentum.
Yeah. You know, I think as well, when you get to that stage where you start to have confidence in yourself and you're in shape and you've achieved what you wanted to achieve, you've got more confidence, you're lifting heavier, you know, you've got what you want. You realize that the things that you were self-conscious about and the things that you felt were inadequate in you, still some of them aren't dealt with. So you need to deal with them in other ways, which is why I, you know, started this podcast, why I want the conference to happen. Because, you know, getting in shape and achieving things is just a start. Yep. You know, there is...
First rung on the ladder, there's many more to go, you know.
There's a lot of healing, a lot of growing that has to happen after, and it's hard to, as a man, to say that because you think it's a woman thing, but it's not. Like, there is a lot of things that you might be ignoring that can spill, and it's more, I think it's more prevalent, more easier to see when you get into like a relationship, or when you're, you know, confronted, or when you're in a job maybe you don't like, or whatever it may be, you know, something that sort of challenges your character and challenges your insecurities, triggers you a bit, you know. That's when you realize, you know, right, there's deeper things here to deal with. Getting in shape, but getting in shape is definitely the first step, no no doubt. But
And I feel like it'll do more for your life than any of those other of those other steps. And plus, it's easy to get in shape too. It might take you 12 weeks to get in, to lose the body fat or whatever, but it really is simple. It's just go to the gym, lift, eat better. You don't need to be disciplined as like a professional bodybuilder to get in shape. You know what I mean? You can get 2 to 3 good workouts a week, clean up your diet, do that for 3, 4, 5, 6 months, and you're going to be in better shape than 95% of people. And you're going to feel 1,000,000 times better than you did before you walked through the door on the first day. So,
no doubt, 100%, totally agree. I think we covered everything there, but how would you approach training on days where you don't feel motivated to train?
Lovely. I love this one. I get this one all the time. What do you do when you're not motivated? Well,
do something.
You're not going to be motivated all the time. That's just plain and simple. No, there's no human being on this planet that wakes up buzzing. Even David Goggins, nobody's 100% motivated, right? So then the way I look at it is, do you feel motivated to brush your teeth every single day? Do you feel motivated to get a shower every day? Do you feel motivated to go to work 5 days a week? No, you don't. But you go anyway because there's value in it. You have to brush your teeth because people at work are going to say you're a smelly if you don't. You don't need
Is that why you call me a smelly?
No, you just smell it. But there's value in those things. The gym is my favorite thing to do, or one of my favorite things to do, and there's at least 40-50% of the time I don't want to go. There's a lot of times where I'm not feeling it, and then there's times where I'm buzzing and I can't wait to get in. There's going to be a lot of days where you're not motivated, but the difference is then just having the discipline, right? So, discipline eats motivation for breakfast. It's like
100%.
There's going to be a lot of days where I don't want to go, especially now I'm doing a photo shoot prep. So my food's low, my cardio's high, I'm hungry, I'm irritable. A lot of days I don't want to go train or I don't want to sit on the bike for 45 minutes at a time.
Yeah.
But it has to be done. You know what I mean? And so there's going to be days where you don't want to go to the gym. Pack your bags and you show up anyway. You drag yourself to it. And one thing I can guarantee you is there will never be a single workout you leave and you're like, I wish I didn't go to the gym. Because the endorphins are going to be rushing. You're going to feel better. You're going to look better. And now you've just proved to yourself that if you can show up on the days where you don't want to go, how easy is it going to be next week when you're feeling better and you do want to go? How easy is it going to be? Then you know what I mean? And then a lot of life, a lot of times in life as well, you're not going to have much time. You're going to be busy. You're not going to be super energetic, super motivated. And so if you can make training part of your lifestyle when you're not feeling it, and it's just going to be ingrained in your lifestyle when things are easy. On easy mode, it's going to be just a breeze. So fucking drag yourself to the gym anyway. I don't care whether you feel like it or not. Show up, get it done.
I do agree with you, but I would go a bit deeper.
You go a bit softer.
I'm going to go a bit deeper. No, I'm going to go deep.
Can't go any deeper, am I to left?
Oh, fuck. I heard that a few times. So,
is that
it? So, one, right, you have to ask yourself why you're doing it. So, you have to have a why. And it's a common thing you hear coaches say, but I'll explain it, the reasons why you do it. So, for example, it may be toxic, it may be constructive, but when I started, my why was to fit in and to get confidence with girls. It may have been toxic, but it worked. It was my why. So that's your motivation. Knowing that if you tick them boxes, it's going to lead you to your why, your purpose of what you want. Toxic or not toxic, that's a different conversation, but you need a why, you need a reason to do it. Right. The second thing is a lot of guys overestimate what you need to do in order to get a result in terms of, guys underestimate, but they also overestimate when they start training a bit. So, for example, like boys come to me all the time who have fell off. They come to me and they're like, oh, mate, I tried to do what I was doing last time, but just can't keep up and all. And so because they can't keep up with what they were doing before, they think that's the standard. That's what they need to do every time they train. Whereas if they just got a quick pump, went for a walk, something simple, just do something simple and build your way up.
Yeah.
And then,
it doesn't have to always be 100% all out.
Yeah. And that's the problem is, there's a very big hustle culture now and all the rest of it, and everyone's trying to do as much as they can. Just do something. Just do something. Like, you know, it was like I was watching the podcast with that guy. What do you call that cowboy guy? I forget his name.
The old guy.
Aye.
Yeah.
I forget his name anyway, but he was like, he works with horses, and he was saying he went down work with a horse that he had, and he was in a really bad mood.
The horse was in a bad mood, or he was in a bad mood?
Don't know about the horse thing, but he was, and he was. He said he was spewing. He was just really, you know, upset, and he sat there and he said, "You can't go near a horse when you're like that." So he sat there and he smoked a cigar. He smoked another cigar, and you know, he went and just cleaned up a bit. Did what he did, and he went home. He didn't. He ended up not, you know, doing what he needed to do, but. He went home and he said, "What did you achieve today?" He was like, "It didn't make it worse." So that's kind of the idea behind it. Is just don't make it worse. Do something, but don't make it worse. So, for example, if you're not motivated to go to the gym, don't go and get a fucking Chinese. You know what I mean? If you're not motivated to, you know, go out for a run, just go out for a walk and eat a bit healthier. You know, if you're not motivated to eat healthy, just eat a bit less than what you normally fucking eat, or something. Do something that is progressive and that is, you know, going to lead you to what we were talking about before, to opening up that part of the brain where you do stuff you don't want to do, and you get better at it and better at it each time you do it. So building a bit of mental resilience that way, you know, that's what I would advise. Yeah.
Yeah. So just to add to what you're saying there is, so what I think you're trying to get is, well, number one, you need to decide the type of person you want to be, right? You want to be a successful person. You want to be someone who's in shape. You want to be someone who makes a lot of money. Whatever your, you know, desired outcome, or whatever you think a successful person is. I think what we are trying to say is give yourself evidence that you are that person. So if you're trying to be, you know, in shape, give yourself evidence that you're someone who does the things that an in shape person does. They go to the gym multiple times a week. They watch their diet. You know, if you're trying to, you know, get your degree or whatever, give yourself evidence that you're someone who's smart. You know, you do your studies, you pass your exams. Give yourself evidence, and then that evidence compiles and gives yourself belief that you are who you say you are.
Yeah,
that builds momentum. And there's one of my favorite sayings from, you know, Alex Hormozy is, success doesn't come from shouting affirmations in the mirror. It comes from giving yourself an undeniable stack of proof that you are who you say you are.
Yeah.
You know, because I think too often in this day and age, people are just, you know, positive affirmations and, you know, everything I want's going to come to me and all this bullshit. I think you have to put action and steps towards the person and type of person you want to be. Give yourself belief that you are that person, even if it's just small steps, even if it's getting out for a walk today, or avoiding that horse. If you pride yourself in being a stoic, calm, you know, non-emotional person or non-reactive person, you know, smoke your cigar and don't go near the horse when you're angry then, and you just give yourself evidence that you have control over your actions and your emotions. So
I like that. That's true, and it does come to the point where when you do start training and maybe you come from a place where you're out of shape, low confidence, you know, and you carry that shame with you of being like that, and you carry a bit of regret, and you know you're ashamed of what you let yourself become. You have to reinvent yourself, and that is what you're talking about. So proving to yourself that you're the person you want to be, or the person that you are. A lot of it stems from you have to kill your old self. So there's that saying I was listening to it before. He was like, there's a guy who posts his workout every day, and he captions it, "I killed my old self today," and it's like he's basically reinventing himself every time he trains. You know,
kill the boy, John.
Kill the boy.
You ever seen Game of Thrones?
Have
you seen Game of Thrones?
I have seen Game of Thrones.
One of the famous scenes is "Kill the boy, John," and that's like it's always on motivational TikToks, and it's stop being a little bitch and be the person that you know you could be.
Yeah, you reinvent yourself. You're right, and it's hard. And you know, there's a lot of factors that come into that reinventing yourself.
Sometimes it involves doing uncomfortable things, like leaving a group of friends.
Yes, because your environment will constantly remind you of who you used to be. And you'll think that that's who you are. And
that's something that I've had to do is, and I'm sure you've had to do, is distance yourself from bad apples and certain people. You know, curate your environment. So, yeah, and that's part of giving yourself the evidence that you are who you want to be. Because if you're trying to be this successful, disciplined, in shape person, then you can't be going out every Saturday night.
Yep.
And if the people you hang around with want to go out every Saturday night, you kind of have to make a decision. Are you the type of person that's going to be friends with
Yeah.
them and go out every Saturday night, or are you not? So
Yeah, because and that goes for, people think when they say that, be around the people you want to be like, or be around people that are successful or whatever. People automatically assume that you just hang about with whoever is in shape and whoever has got money. It's not like that. It gets deeper as you go on. Yes, you want to be around people who are successful in terms of finances, but also in terms of like wealth. And what I mean by wealth is like their relationship with their family, the way to treat their friends, the way to speak to people,
100%.
Their characters.
Yes.
That's the people you want to be around.
There's more metrics for success than your bank account. Like
time.
How some people are good people to be around that just give you energy. Some people you have a conversation with and you leave and you feel energized and motivated. Some people you leave and you feel drained. There's people that are, good husbands, good friends. They can teach you things. There's more metrics for success than just how rich someone is.
Yeah.
So if there's if you think one of your mates is a really good dad or whatever, and you're going to be a dad, then hang around him, see pick up some quality skills. If someone's a really good businessman, but maybe he's not rich yet, but he's got the entrepreneurial skills, hang around and you pick up a few tips.
Yeah. I actually heard before that one thing you should incorporate in your routine, and I know this from experience because it's very true, is you should have a steroids. You should always have.
I waited 90 minutes for that.
Trent. You should have a stimulating conversation every day.
Yeah.
So, and it doesn't mean that you go deep like this, like a podcast. It can just be a stimulating conversation that you have maybe about a certain topic. And that's the people you want to be around, people who stimulate you, which is what you were trying to sort of get at there, yeah. Like people who stimulate your mind and you feel refreshed coming away from.
Not just that, people who challenge you too, because nobody wants a yes man. Nobody wants friends that are like, yeah, that's great, and just agree with everything. Seems nobody wants to be in a relationship with someone who's a pushover and just agree. You need to be challenged, so... and who would listen to this podcast if we just agreed with everything? Oh yeah, I just completely agree. You want to have someone that challenges your ideas a little bit, and then that makes you think about your thoughts and your ideas a little bit too. So when you have these conversations with people, have conversations with people that disagree with you on certain things too.
Yeah,
and that's debate and that's engaging. So.
Well, I'm going to challenge you on that.
Good. See, now we're incorporating it. Good.
What advice would you give to someone who's fell off their training and wants to get back on track, but is struggling to get back on track? It kind of ties in with what we were talking about before, I suppose, doesn't it? With reinvent yourself.
I think this is a relevant one, though. I think this is a good one. So, for people who are struggling to get back on track, is set yourself like barriers and guide rails so that it's harder to fall off track, right? So you're off track, without saying get yourself a coach. Tell the people around you what you're going to do. Set yourself some goals, set yourself some guidelines, and then you have something like goalposts to aim towards. If you're falling off track and you don't have a reason to get back on track, it's going to be fucking hard to get on track, isn't it? So set yourself a goal and then tell people what you're going to do, because that's going to keep you accountable. It's going to make you stick to your word. So whether it's you book a photo shoot, whether it's you book a holiday in 8 weeks that you want to be in shape for, whether it's your friend's wedding in 4 months that you want to be in shape for, have a goal, have a deadline, and now you have urgency, you have a reason to be in shape, and tell everyone, tell your mum, tell your dad, tell your dog, tell social media that you're going to be in shape for X date, you're going to do certain things, because that's just extra accountability. And then to go one level further, hire a coach, and that's just the highest level of accountability. So have a goal, have deadlines, and all that creates urgency. And because then there's shame, or if you don't complete the goal, you don't show up in shape, there's shame then, and you've let those people down as well as yourself. So I feel like that can sometimes keep people on track. So
I do agree, but I've got a different sort of view on it. So I've been thinking about it recently. I think there's two types of people, right? There's people who train because they love training and it's part of their life and it's part of their identity. But then there's also people who just train for big goals. So for example, photo shoot clients. So there was like an influx there for years of people who literally just started training and booked the photo shoot. And there's nothing wrong with that. You know what I mean? It's a big goal.
Yeah.
But what it can create is a very unhealthy relationship with training and food. Depending on the coach, of course, depends on the coach. I will say that. But if you go straight in to training with the idea of I'm going to compete or I want to do a photo shoot, give yourself a long runway. Don't jump in and go for like an 8 to 12 week prep when you've never trained before. Because what that'll develop is an unhealthy relationship with training, with food, with lifestyle. I would really just for about 12 months, right? People say like 12 months, and I'm like, as soon as they say that, I'm like, you're not in it for the right reasons, right? So if I say 12 months, give yourself 12 months to nail your routine, develop a bit of a lifestyle, make better decisions with food, better decisions with your training, train hard, try to stay away from the drink, say no to things that are getting in the way of your progress for 12 months, and then we'll do a photo shoot prep, and they look at you like you've 10 heads, and they're like, fuck that, they can do it in 12 weeks. And then that's usually the people who fall off and come back and find it hard to get back because they're constantly going back to that unhealthy relationship with training, with food, because they associate it with getting like sub 10 body fat percentage and getting tanned up and getting the cheeks oiled, and that's what they associate it with. And there's nothing wrong with that. You know, I've done it and I loved it. But before I did it,
your cheeks oiled.
I love getting my cheeks oiled. But before I had developed a really healthy relationship with food, and like I gave myself a couple of years to really, even though I competed when I was 18, natural and still natural, but during that time, I developed a better relationship with food, a better relationship with training. It was part of my identity, and then I went for a big goal. Whereas I think a lot of people do it the opposite way now, and that's the problem. That can be a problem. You know, I don't know if you would agree on that. But
Summarize all that is basically fall in love with the process.
Yeah.
First, and everything else will follow. The man who loves walking will always walk further than the man who loves the destination. So
Yeah.
the person who loves training and trains for their mental health because they love how it makes them feel, it's always going to be training longer and better than the person who's training in 8 weeks because they've got to go to Ibiza. So like I over the years I've had hundreds of coaching clients, and I've got the ones that, you know, your typical 21-year-old he's got Ibiza with the lads in 10 weeks.
Yeah.
And he goes and starts a cheeky steroid cycle on the slag as well. And he might get in shape, get in shape for Ibiza, typically doesn't, but he might. And then 3 months after, he's out of shape, looks like a barrel again. And it's just like a vicious circle. And then there's the people who, you know, they kind of get into training just to lose a little bit of weight. And then sometimes they're surprised the most 6 months later, they're absolutely loving it. They're balls deep in training. And then they're maybe thinking of a photo shoot or doing a show or doing something further with it because they've just eased into it, set small goals, and they've done it for the right reasons, and they've fallen in love with the process naturally. Whereas some people, I feel like the people who are like, you know, getting into training for a photo shoot, that's not for them. That's for social media. That's for, if I go and get shredded here, I'm going to get loads of likes and loads of girls are gonna love this, or the lads are going to love this. That's doing it for the wrong reasons. I feel like if you do it for yourself, you don't need to boast and shout it from the rooftops and do a photo shoot straight away. And I feel like to be honest, mate, a good coach wouldn't tell you to jump into photo shoots straight away.
Definitely not.
Because you certainly wouldn't have a physique for it if you're training 12 weeks.
Yeah.
You certainly wouldn't have the physique for it. And I would probably say you probably don't have the mental toughness to diet that hard.
No.
Most people wouldn't as well. So
No.
fall in love with the process and everything else, then you'll naturally find yourself progressing, and you know, I'm loving this training. Yeah. How can I take it further? I'll diet harder, I'll do a shoot, I'll do this.
Any of my photo shoot clients I've trained for at least a year beforehand, and like, you know, they've came to me and said they want to do it.
Exactly.
There's been once where I've came to someone and said, listen, you're in the shape to do it, you can do it.
Yeah.
Now recently, one of my new clients actually asked me about a photo shoot, and I told him, you know, give it a year. Give me a year, and then we'll do a prep. And he was like, and this guy, you know, he's been training away, but he's not at that stage he's not got that relationship with food yet, not that routine. He hasn't got that routine yet. So I'm not going to lie to him, but there's a lot of coaches that will lie and say, I get you in shape 16 weeks, give him a load of clean, give him a load of T3, and just diet them really hard, put them on nothing but facing a rice cake for 16 weeks, and you know, and that's the way it works. You know, that's the industry, and I can see why they do it. I'll say that because they want results, they want to post it. But there's a duty of care you have for your clients. Do you agree? You know, you have a duty of care to look after that person and make sure that you have their best interest at heart.
Yeah.
Just as well as
sometimes their best interest is telling them what they don't want to hear, because that person wants to hear that you're going to take them through the shoot, and sometimes you being having that empathy and putting their interest first is telling them no.
Exactly.
So that's and sometimes being a coach is telling someone what they don't want to hear and telling someone no. Either no, it's you've been slacking off, or you need to step it up, or no, that's not the right way forward. We want to do this, or sometimes you need to tell people no.
Yeah, like my first coach told me when I wanted to do a show, I wanted to do a bodybuilding show. My first coach that I had, I was getting good. I was big for like 17. I was 17 when I decided to do it. I was pretty big, like, and I was in good nick. But he turned around to me and he was like, "Mate, we're going to stop this because I don't think you're ready for it to do a show." And I was like, "Mate, that took it really bad." I was like, "Fuck you." I was like, "I'm going to do it."
Yeah.
So I hired somebody else.
Yeah.
And I did the show, mate. I wasn't good nick, you know, for someone that age.
Yeah.
But I wasn't ready.
Yeah.
I should have done it.
You know what? You wouldn't. Unless you went and got that other coach and did it, you wouldn't have known that you weren't ready. You would have forever been like, I'm ready. He's just a dick or whatever. So it's only that you went through it, you realized
you learn.
And with perspective, you're able to look back and realize you weren't ready.
Yeah,
you know,
with perspective now, I look back and 100% agree.
Yeah, but you learn from it though. So if
yeah.
anything, I wouldn't say it's a bad thing, because now you have that perspective where you know if someone else isn't ready.
Yeah,
because you've been not ready.
I understand what you're saying. You're definitely right, but it does come down as well to what we were saying before, the coaching aspect of it, like how to say things. Yeah. You know, like he sort of blunt came out and was like, not ready for it. So, no,
he maybe could have put it better and kept you encouraged a little bit. Or Tiarnan, give me 3-4 months and we'll see how you are then. And maybe then, or maybe next year. Or let's just get you a little bit more on top of your diet, because didn't you say you developed an eating disorder afterwards?
This was before, so I developed an eating disorder very early on.
Oh, right, okay. Well, I was going to say, you clearly weren't ready if things like that spiraled and stuff too. So, yeah, he was right. You weren't ready, but he wasn't being the best coach he could have been. He could have came to you in a better way, and he still could have kept you as a client. And then he also, if he had kept you on for the time, explained it properly, he maybe could have guided you through the shoot properly.
There's a process, of course, you know.
So basically,
he was early on. Yeah, he was early on his coaching career, and I was early on my training career. So it just clashed. But you're right, 100%. There's a way to go about things, but sometimes you need the harsh truth. But I think as a coach, you've got that duty in terms of how you say it and how you explain it, and you know, a bit of empathy, a bit of constructive criticism. But also as a client, you know, this is something that isn't talked about. You should have that, you know, characteristic or that attitude of being able to take constructive criticism too.
Of course.
Because some people are really bad with criticism and rejection. You know, they take it really... I'm one of them. I used to be terrible for it. Like, you know, I used to hate when someone criticized me or someone, like, called me out or rejected me.
Yeah.
I used to take it really personal.
Yeah.
Don't take it personal. If your coach says something, unless it's really, like, calls you a fat bastard, like, that's different. But, like, if they call you out and say, you know, listen, you're not on track, we need to be doing this to achieve this, please don't take it personal. That's what you hired them for.
Too many people are fucking snowflakes these days.
Exactly, mate. But not even like that. It's like they're reactive. Like as soon as they hear the word you're not doing or you're not good enough or something like that, they're instantly like, bump. They're like,
so
right.
Just a couple of finishing touches before we maybe run out of time is part of you being a good coach is realizing the different psychology you have from your different clients. Yeah. So I have certain clients that want to be spoke to a certain way. Like some clients who I need a bit more of a softer approach. Some clients I'm a bit more friendlier with, and you know we're all broy. And then some clients who they need a bit of an authority figure, and you need to put the foot down and say, "Look, John, you're fucking slacking this week. You need to pick yourself up here by the bootstraps and get your shit together." Some people need that, and then some people need that soft approach. So with the more experience you get as a coach and the more different types of clients you have, I have everyone from young females at like 17, 18, and I have men who are 55. So there's very different psychology in those two different people and different goals. So you also can curate your language based on who you're speaking to and that person's goals, also the mood they're in, what their life is like outside of it. So there's certain ways to talk to certain clients to get your goals and your point across.
Yeah, I want to touch on something that I developed that ability through a job that I took on, a secondary job I took on throughout my time coaching. I was actually a classroom assistant for my old school in a behaviour unit. So I work with kids like with severe behaviour problems, you know, the modest kids you can meet. And I also worked in a special school, you know, and obviously there's a vast difference between the both. So how you approach the kids, each kid is different in terms of how you speak to them. You have to be very careful about that. Yeah. You know, it's a lot more sensitive in that setting.
Yeah.
Because you're dealing with kids who are like coming from maybe a bad home, or maybe coming, you know, from a foster home, or they're, you know, just in a bad environment, or, you know, they've got lots of triggers. Maybe they've got autism that's undiagnosed as well. So you're dealing with so many different personalities. You have to learn how to approach it, how you discipline. And when I say discipline, I mean like call someone out. So like some of the kids, you can be a wee bit more lenient. You can be like, ways up, you know, do this. Whereas some of the kids, you do have to give them time to react a bit. Yeah. So some of them will like lash out a bit. You kind of have to let them cool down, and then you say your piece, and you let them hold that. You hold that space for them. Yeah. So that is something I developed through that job, and I've learned to apply into my coaching. So if I see a client behaving a certain way, I can pick up on it.
Yeah.
And it's skill. It's skill. Like, it takes a long time to develop, but I can pick up when someone's off.
Yeah.
Just by their body language, how they're talking.
Yeah.
You know, I know when they're stressed. I know when they're feeling a bit agitated, or when they're like anxious. Mm-hmm. And I'll simply just turn around maybe and say like, "Are you alright? You know what I mean? Do you need come here to talk to you? Like, is everything alright?" Mm-hmm. And you know, you get it out of them. So that's something that a coach does need to develop as a skill. I think it's good to have that. You know, it's a very valuable asset to be able to help your clients in other ways other than just giving them a diet and giving them a training plan.
Coaching is much more than just fucking calories and macros.
So much more.
There's much more, and I've had clients that have gone from fat and out of shape to actually get engaged and find a life partner. You know, I've had 16, 17-year-old boys who are skinny like myself, can't fill their sleeves and no confidence, and then they go and get girlfriends, or they go and get good jobs, and they get into training and feel a lot better about themselves. You know, I've seen some pretty cool character arcs from some of my clients and transformations. Fitness is, so being a coach in fitness is much more than just, you know, more calories this week, a wee bit different training. It's mentoring people, it's teaching people, it's helping them learn from your mistakes.
Yeah.
And then it's also nearly like a father type figure for some people, and a role model certainly for certain people too. So coaching's so much more valuable than just, you know, get a spreadsheet with a couple of numbers on it. And you develop relationships with these people too, and then when they win, you win too. So like when my clients have a great week or do something great, I feel great about it too. So
it made me appreciate the boxing coaches that I had as a kid. I didn't stick to boxing for long, you know. I was at it for about a year or two as a kid, and then I was in and out of it training wise, you know, just because I loved the sport and the skill of it. But after I got injured, I actually broke my hand, and I couldn't box, so I started lifting. That's how I got into lifting. But it made me appreciate the coaches because they're voluntary, most of them.
Yeah.
And the time and the care they put into them kids is like, mate, you just so much
kids
respect.
aren't easy, bro, as well.
Not easy, mate. Like the roughest kids in the roughest estates. Mm-hmm. And like, mate, you'll never get a better coach than some of the boxing coaches and like youth programs, you know, like the voluntary boxing coaches. They're unbelievable, mate. Like the amount of care they have for them kids, the amount of like support they give them, and it's unbelievable. Like, there's so much respect for them, and they're severely underfunded. Like, it's ridiculous.
Good human beings, man.
Yeah, and it's ridiculous. Like, you know, it makes me, you know, realize that it's not all about numbers too, because I've been in mentorships, and I know you have too, and you know, numbers is a good metric. You know, you want profit, you deserve it, you're valuable. But I look at them boys and I'm like, you're so valuable, but you don't get the recognition money ways for it, but that's not what they want. They're chasing something else, and that's why my why as a coach changed, because I realized it was like, because for a while it was about, I need money, but it needs to change, because you need to realize, why are you doing this? And that's why I created the Alpha Male, because I care about young men, I care about men, I care about how to feel. I want to see men do better, because it means something to me. It's a purpose, and I would do it for free if it wasn't my living.
Yeah, 100%, man. And my kind of why and direction has changed. The biggest, like my why is impact. I want to have an impact on people. It's not just making more profit this month or getting more clients. It's what impact do you have on people? How do your clients and how do people around you speak about you? Do your clients recommend you to their friends, family? Do your friends speak highly of you? What impact are you leaving on these people? Because really, at the end of the day, that's the most important thing. People remember how you made them feel. So, that boxing coach, you remembered how he made you feel in that moment when he talked about the sweetie. At the end of the day, that's the most important thing is, when you leave the room or when you leave someone's company, is how did you make them feel? That's what they'll remember mostly about you. So, me and you certainly are committed to, leaving this world a better place, making the people... lifting young men up in particular and leaving an impact and creating a better impact and giving them the blueprint to improve their own lives like me and you have and hopefully continue to do.
100%, mate. That's the mission. And, if we were in this just for money, we would just sell drugs or something like that.
I'd probably do OnlyFans, to be honest.
Or do OnlyFans. Or,
I still might do it, to be honest.
But wouldn't,
they were thinking about it. I get offers, so...
there's easier ways to make money. Like, you're not in it for the money, mate. And that's what a lot of coaches, new coaches, like that's what they do. If I have one piece of advice for a new coach that's just qualified, is this: be ready for 6 years, 5 to 6 years of getting fuck all in return and just learning, and make sure that you're in it for the purpose of what you're doing. Make sure that you are specific about who you're helping, not because it's a niche market, but because you care, because you're going to put. Because see that free work you're doing, that cheap work at the start when you're earning your stripes, that's what's going to drive you, because you're doing it because you care about the people you're working with. So that's something that I would really advise new coaches to be prepared for. If you're getting into this industry. If you're getting into this industry for money, get a job. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, and you're gonna run out of a fire pretty soon if you're into this industry for money, because it's very competitive. And there's maybe like the top 0.1% of coaches that are really balling. Most people just make a decent living. Yeah, and it's not as glamorous as it looks from the outside. People just look at super successful coaches or influencers and they think if they start, that's what it's going to be. But the exact same thing applies that we said about training. We said fall in love with the process.
Yeah.
The man who loves walking will always walk further than the man who loves the destination. So the coach who loves coaching, who loves leaving an impact, who loves helping people, who loves providing value, is always going to be a better coach, is always going to get better results, and is always going to be here in a few years versus the person who started to make a quick buck. Because I've seen a lot of coaches come and go. I'm sure you have.
Big time.
I've seen a lot of PTs in the gym. I go to come and go. I've been training in that gym 5-6 years, and there has been 2 PTs that have successfully gone from in the gym personal trainer to online, and I'm one of them. And there's been like 40 PTs, or at least, that have been in there in those years. As people start from the wrong reasons, and then 6 months in, they peter out of energy because they started for the wrong reason. So
to finish this off, Rory's going to do a wee rap.
Check 1, 2, 3.
Translation.
No, I'm not.
But folks, thanks for listening. Thank you to Kiln Studios for recording our first ever podcast, and we're looking forward to the next episode. Stay tuned.